Hello, my name is Rebecca Gonzalez, and the course that I have designed is titled The Language of IB. When I began concept mapping, I knew I wanted to do something within the realm of IB. However, there are so many professional development opportunities already out there, I didn't know where to quite get started. As the article from Ramley states, a lot of teachers, new teachers to IB specifically, struggle with understanding the basic terminology and setting them apart. Coming from an IB campus myself, can attest that this is a common trend shown in IB schools. I went ahead and decided on the constructivist theory moving forward because IB is all about inquiry and students driving the learning, which supports what the constructivist theory states. Going forward, I also knew that there is a heavy emphasis on formative assessments. This allows students to catch their mistakes before taking a big, scary summative. So I even went ahead and made my formative assessment a scavenger hunt, but it will be the same for the summative. However, there will be different components that the learners will have to look for, which I'll dive in later in the presentation. Moving on to the presentation, it's important for teachers to know what is the IB program. The International Baccalaureate Program is a special type of diploma track that is rigorous, inquiry-based, and implemented worldwide. These schools that do adopt the IB program not only have to adhere to the IB curriculum, but as well as still manage their mandatory state standards. This can provide a challenge for teachers and even students when you're having two sets of curriculum being taught to you. However, the IB program implements transdisciplinary learning, which is a way to blend the different subjects together and therefore create an authentic learning experience for students, which is what the constructivist theory supports, is authentic learning for your students. To begin, there will be an icebreaker that supports the tuning in process of the inquiry cycle. This is a provocation to see what students already know and where these new teachers have room to grow as well. This helps to give a starting point to make sure that if teachers already have a certain knowledge or familiarity that they're aware of, to not go back and reteach those unless you're adding something new to their experience. This is also a strategy that is recommended for students, and therefore teachers being able to see through a see, think, wonder will also help them know how to implement it in their own classrooms. To begin, there will be an icebreaker that supports the tuning in process of the inquiry cycle. This is a provocation to see what students already know and where these new teachers have room to grow as well. This helps to give a starting point to make sure that if teachers already have a certain knowledge or familiarity that they're aware of, to not go back and reteach those unless you're adding something new to their experience. This is also a strategy that is recommended for students, and therefore teachers being able to see through a see, think, wonder will also help them know how to implement it in their own classrooms. From here, we will go on and explain what is transdisciplinary learning. I have the cake icon in the corner because it relates to this example right here. When you bake a cake, you need ingredients. You need eggs, milk, flour, sugar, and once you bake this cake, are you able to take out the eggs? No. If you wanted just the water, you can't take it out. It's already baked and blended to where you cannot pick it apart. This is much like transdisciplinary learning, where our learning experiences should be taking eggs or social studies and baking them with math, water, and from there, once you have your cake, your learning experience, you can no longer pull these apart. The IB supports transdisciplinary learning by implementing these 6 themes or 6 units. And these are going to be the umbrella for building your unit, which we'll look at later. These 6 units are who we are, where we are in place and time, how the world works, how we organize ourselves, how we express ourselves, and sharing the planet. It'll be important to emphasize to our learners that lines of inquiry or LOIs are different from the themes because these are teacher written for your unit, and there's usually 3 per unit. These provide a roadmap such as if we are in the unit who we are, we're going to want an inquiry into identity, for example. Identity would be the concept that we use to tie into math and reading and science, and they should all support the inquiry cycle, which tends to be the way that students learn sequentially. Now, inquiry can take you places you've never expected, and we may have to go from finding out to tuning in all over again on a new topic that it springs up. However, these are just the basics, and teachers are going to just want to know the terminology for this particular course. I place key concepts right after LOIs because these are concepts that might go into a line of inquiry being written by the teacher. These are some concepts that will go across grade levels that can help branch the subjects and the units together. What's great about key concepts is that you might have who we are focusing on responsibility, but also how we organize ourselves might also use responsibility. These concepts are used to not only support your IB unit, but to bridge the units together. The learner profile attributes tend to be one that teachers understand and implement the quickest. They can be used as positive behavior incentive systems, as these are the character traits you want to see out of your students. Communicator, balanced, thinkers, reflective. I've seen this be used for Student of the Month awards, where we are looking for a caring student of the month. This is very kid-friendly language that still implies that rigor that they can achieve as early as kindergarten, maybe even pre-K. There's 10 traits in total, however, you will only be using 2 to 3 per unit. I put ATL skills towards the end because we are working backwards from our unit theme and then the roadmap of how we're going to get there. And now we're going to talk about how do we achieve learning those concepts? What is the process to our learning? There's 5 big categories that IB breaks down, such as communication, thinking, self-management, social, and research. Within these, there are subcategories that teachers will familiarize themselves with. However, for this training, it's just important that they're familiar with this overview. Now that we've reviewed the components of a unit planner, we're going to dive into this scavenger hunt, which is a formative assessment to see if teachers in groups can discuss and decide which terms would be the best to make a more cohesive unit. This is an incomplete unit planner for how the world works at a 2nd grade level. Key concepts has been erased and highlighted for teachers to work in their groups to figure out 2 to 3 concepts that would best fit this unit. There is no correct answer because it is all about the rationale. As a teacher, can you look at a unit planner and decide what is best for your students to make this the most cohesive experience for them? The summative assessment would take place immediately after on a Google form. This is to be completed independently. There is no correct answer on which learner profile attributes you think would best fit that unit planner. However, the score is going to be based on explanation. How well do they use the terms that we have just covered? Can they provide the rationale on how they would use this to support their students? Something important to note is that the constructivist theory supports how the formative assessment we just took mirrors the summative. This is setting up students, or learners in this case, for success because we have just shown them the expectation with immediate feedback. As you can see, this is the incomplete unit planner they will use for their summative. The learner profile attributes is also erased and highlighted. Something to note is that earlier during the formative assessment, learner profile attributes was also blank. This is so that way teachers don't already have in their head what has been previously used for this unit, and they can independently think for themselves and show their mastery of the concepts. To close out the session, learners will complete a 3-2-1 reflection on Google Forms. This will be a 3-question forms on what are 3 things they have learned, what are 2 things they'd like to improve on, and finally, what is 1 question they still have. It's important to end with a question because this is student-centered learning. So the learner should always be asking more questions to guide what would be the next follow-up training, for example.